Hi, in this video, I want to talk about the board meeting this morning and what happened with regard to the Pledge of Allegiance by the board president, our new board president, and about their responses to questions about the investigation over our public safety department. So, I usually listen to the meeting at home over Zoom in the mornings because these are monthly board meetings and they start at 8:30 a.m. and they talk about new business, old business, approving the minutes, and then they have each committee have their chairperson come forward and talk about what motions each committee had made or want to make to the board, and then they make decisions and discuss those motions. So I don't usually go down to the conference center in person until 11 o'clock for members' time. So if you don't have the time to attend these monthly meetings, they are very long, and the first 2.5 hours from 8:30 to 11 look very clean, like a normal business meeting. But the most important part that needs to be paid attention to is members' time that begins at 11 o'clock a.m. And I will tell you this, I used to attend only on Zoom the members' time unless there was something really important going on. But what I've found over time is that our assistant community manager, his name is John Wormuth, he manages the Zoom room. So he allows people to come into the meeting, and he has continuously and increasingly censored members in these meetings. So, if you have been on any business meetings or Zoom calls, there are chat functions, there are reaction functions, and you can be muted. So as the host, our assistant community manager, John Wormuth, he disables the chat. So it used to be that you could chat him or ask a question, but in recent months, he has completely disabled the chat. And I find that to be a form of censorship to the members. And also the emojis where you can like something or heart something or do like angry face, those have been disabled as well. So that has been one of my concerns and why I choose to go in person at members' time if I really have some hard questions and things that are pressing in the community. And also because I like to see how they behave in person. You cannot see each director on the camera at the board meeting, and it's very important to look at people's body language and all of the subtleties, the things that they say and the things that they do not say. So I went down a few minutes before 11, and thankfully there were other members who also came to be part of members' time and had actually been there from 8:30 in the morning. So there were about 10 people in the room, and I want to say online on Zoom there were about 30 members, which is usually more than normal, and they watched the whole thing. So members' time starts with this long preamble, which has just gotten more ridiculous over time. And frankly, I think that that's had to do with John Hannock, our previous board director. Basically, you can't say this, you can't do this, just limiting your free speech as if we're the ones that are totally inappropriate and disrespectful when actually a lot of times they are. And I mentioned in previous videos that a lot of their behavior can be very passive aggressive, to say something or do something or gaslight somebody, and it sets off a member, and then the member will get a disorderly conduct ticket or something at a meeting. So those are my concerns about the power and abuse of, or the abuse of power and authority by trying to control and censor people. So I went down for members' time, and the first person who stood up asked the new board president, he just became board president after the one who's been there for 9 years resigned, and he said, "Why didn't you call the meeting and stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance?" So this was kind of shocking to me because I think that I missed that. A lot of times if you log on, you miss certain things that go on in the room. So in recent traditions, the board president has always started the meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag that's right in the corner of the room. Well, apparently, Phil did not want to recite the Pledge of Allegiance when he called the meeting to order. So I guess there was discussion or something that went on, but Sean, the community manager, ultimately prompted and said, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. So that was very offensive to this member who spoke at members' time. And he basically said, I'm a red-blooded American. He's a veteran, so he was, active duty. And he said, my blood is red and blue. And that was offensive to me. So when I spoke at members' time, I said, look, you're the board president now. This is not Phil, the individual person who doesn't want to recite the Pledge of Allegiance to start this meeting, but you are now representing HFCA and the membership and the community. And if that's what the custom is to do the Pledge of Allegiance, then that's what you should be doing. And it, was basically very disrespectful for him not to do that. That is the kind of person that Phil is. If you go to these meetings or just log on before 11 o'clock for members' time, you will see what kind of people that these community members are and how they treat people and how they treat our country and freedom of speech. So it got worse from there. Let me just say that. But that's how we kicked off members' time, was something that I just wasn't even aware of this morning. So a lot of people were there because of this investigation going on with public safety. So people were asking questions, and basically they had this preamble of rules for the members. And then Phil, as the president, said, he read the memo that they sent out to membership earlier this month, and they basically said, we're aware of rumors and misstatements on social media, and we don't want people to speculate. The investigation has been concluded. We took appropriate steps to address things, and, we do not want any derogatory comments. And he basically said, end of discussion. Like he said, and we're not talking about it anymore. So he started the meeting at 8:30 a.m. with that memo saying, we're not discussing this anymore. And then he said it again at members' time at 11 o'clock. We're not discussing it anymore. So luckily, other people, in addition to myself, spoke up and said, what's going on with this investigation? This is a concern, for our safety. And why can't you tell us when the investigation started? Who did the investigation? Who paid for that investigation? How much it cost? What were the actionable steps that you took to address the investigation? So they refused to say anything. And you could tell that, they were in an uncomfortable and awkward position, and they're hiding something. So, we actually had an hour-long members' time. So I'm just going to go through the highlights. I stood up. I said, I just wanted to confirm that you two are the new president and vice president, because our president, John Hannick, resigned and Mike Smolensky resigned. My speculation because of this investigation. And I said, are you going to tell the people about why they do not post the recordings of the meetings? So I said, we know that the meetings are recorded. It says it right on a sign in the room. The meetings are recorded, but they also put on the record that no one else is allowed to record these meetings. So my first members' time was, why are you not having the recordings posted on the private or public website of Hemlock Farm so that members who can attend and might want to see what happens at members' time see it? They literally didn't respond. And they said, next question. And that is actually what happened when the person had commented about the flag. Like Phil basically said that he didn't want to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And he said, why not? And he wouldn't provide an answer. And then ultimately he said, we're not going to discuss this now. It's like, well, when are we going to discuss it? Because obviously you guys don't know each other in real life or are friends in real life. If it's not going to be discussed at members' time, when is the proper time? That's the only time that members can discuss these things. So they don't want to engage. Most of their responses today were, thank you for your input. Thank you for your comment. We can't discuss this. So they didn't answer that question. Then they went on to some other people. So then when I finally got to speak again, I circled back and I said, I didn't hear an answer to my question. Why aren't the recordings posted for the members to view? And they didn't have a response. They did not have a response. So ultimately I pushed it. I said, why not? And Sean, the community manager, said, I don't know. It's just like, like, what do you people talk about, especially in all your closed secret meetings? Like, these are important things to discuss. The membership has a right to know what's going on at meetings. Why can't you just post them unless you're afraid of them hearing what you're saying and doing? So other people spoke at members' time. I'll just reflect mostly on what I spoke about. I got up for another part of members' time and I asked a very direct question, and I said, has there ever been a time or occasion when public safety has not reported criminal issues like sexual assault, rape, or domestic violence that are criminal in nature to proper law enforcement agencies, and, not followed protocol to report them as crimes? And silence, absolute silence, and aversion of eyes. Like, they wouldn't look at me and maintain eye contact. So I said to the audience, you're watching this. They're not denying that one of the issues that was investigated may have been that public safety isn't reporting actual crimes to proper law enforcement agencies. So there was that, silence and lack of response. And then just the customary, like, we can't discuss that. We're not going to discuss that, like we said. And it's just like, what you refuse to say tells us more than what you're saying. And what you're saying is basically nothing. So I got up at another time and I said, at what point are you going to let the membership know that a lawsuit has been filed? Has a lawsuit been filed? And again, there was a lot of evasion. Sean evaded it. Then he kind of said, there is no lawsuit. And I said, is there no lawsuit? Or is it just that the lawsuit hasn't been filed in court, but you've been served the writ of summons, and they're waiting for it to be sent back to file with the local court? So then he kind of stopped talking again. So these people are being very evasive. I had also asked, one of my first questions was how long our community manager, Sean, has been our community manager. So he said 2022. Now, you all should know, I know the answers to these questions, but I want them to be put on record. I like to think I have done a lot of work in the court system, so I like to put on a good line of questioning, because they can't get away from it. They try to put out these little memos, but they can't get away from a direct line of questioning, and what they don't say is very telling. So I said, how long have you been the community manager? He says, since 2022. I said, how many investigations and scandals have occurred under your management and leadership here? And he kind of bristled at that. And I said, I'm asking you how many legal investigations have occurred. And then he kind of thought about it and he said, I guess 2. So 2 of them being the water issue, which DEP had to investigate, and we got a serious fine because of what went on and the mismanagement there. And then, of course, this investigation with public safety. I go sit back down because you have to take turns at members' time. And one of our neighbors here, community members, Ray, reminded me that there was also an investigation because of a child nearly drowning at Laurel Beach a few years ago. Actually, I was at that event. It was an event for the summer camp, and we were basically celebrating summertime, and it was a family barbecue, but the staff were kind of treating it, the recreation staff were treating it like it was their party. So they weren't watching the children swim. They were partying with like the rest of us, but it was really a barbecue for parents, like took off of work to go to this barbecue function with our children, and a child almost drowned. So that was actually a third. So I got up to speak again and I said, actually, there was a third investigation, and that had to do with a child nearly drowning because people weren't doing their jobs on your watch. so, so that was, one of the things that I brought up. And then I had also asked about, now I'm like losing all my train of thought because there's so many things. I asked who doxed my email. So I had mentioned in one of my earlier videos that I had sent an email last February 13th or 14th after a neighbor-to-neighbor meeting at the firehouse. And I wrote up the behavior that I found appalling by our then board president, John Hannick, and Michael Pechersky was there on the board, and Sean Nordley, the community manager. And they all went there to basically spy on me and see what I was going to do, because they had removed me from the club as the president and as a member. And, I don't like authority, so I'm going to go anyway. And so they came to watch. And I talked about that in the other video. And I said, who doxed my email? Because the next day I sent an email telling them what I thought of them. And it was only sent to the 9 directors on the board, the community manager, and the assistant community manager. And lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, it shows up by anonymous poster on Facebook, social media. And it had my email exposed, and then it had blacked out the emails of all the directors and all the managers. And it was just trying to create a problem. I'll say anything in your face that I'll put in writing. So, it's clear, I think, to most people that if I don't think you're ethical or have good moral character, I probably don't like you. And I'll tell you that to your face. So, if I like you, because I'm probably very nice to you and happy and enthusiastic and uplifting around you. But if I don't like you, you know it, and I have no problem telling you. So they doxed me, and the only people who would have access to that email were these people, and it's against their ethical oath to release something that's confidential. So that created a huge, thing with Michael Pechersky, who's a hothead on the board. And so he started to fight back. I said, your son was looking me up on social media. Was it you who doxed me? And he actually said, yeah, it was me. And so I said, okay, Michael Pechersky has just admitted that he's the person that doxed me. And then another member kind of got him off the hook and said, were you just kidding? Were you just kidding? But I don't believe that, because again, it had to be somebody in the room there that was on the board at the time. And then Sean, the community manager, said, well, you posted your email. And I said, no, I didn't post that email. I post some emails that I send to them, but I don't post every email. And I did not post that one because it was a very strongly worded email. And it was kind of vicious. And so I didn't post it out of respect for the people that I was sending it to. So I think that was interesting that he assumed that I post every email, because to me, that means, oh, she's already posted emails. They'll just think that this was already out there. Well, guess what, Sean? It wasn't already out there. So did you just give yourself away? Are you the doxer, or was it somebody related to Michael Pechersky? I asked them to do an investigation on that, and they didn't do anything. So that's why I asked about it today. And it created, like I said, this whole uprising, with Michael Pechersky trying to defend himself. So I think that those were the main highlights. Basically, other people spoke up and said that, I'm a single woman, or, living in this community, and I want to know details of this investigation. So there were a lot of people that were saying similar things and saying, you just saying that you've concluded an investigation and we've taken care of it tells us nothing. So, I wanted to put on the record that Sean has been the community manager for less, 3 years basically, and all these things have gone on under his leadership. And we just had the 2 most senior board directors resign, and now we're having a potential lawsuit coming because of the way that they mishandled this investigation and what has been going on in the public safety department. So people got to see the real deal. At one point, the assistant community manager, when I asked the question, has public safety ever not reported a crime like a crime of intimate partner violence. And he actually unmuted and said, "That's a stupid question." Like, what kind of person in management, in a leadership position that's paid on our money, literally tells a member, "That's a stupid question." He said, "Because that's a stupid question." That's what he said. And everyone was like appalled to hear that. And I'll tell you this, 30 minutes later, he said, "I apologize for that." I'm like, that tells us who your character is. You can apologize. That's like getting, confession when you go see the priest and get confession and absolve you. Oh, you're apologizing? What does it say about your character that when I stood up and asked a question and said, "Has there ever been a time when public safety hasn't reported a crime of intimate partner violence or abuse to the proper law enforcement authorities," that our assistant community manager said, "Because that's a stupid question"? That's what we're dealing with here. And if you aren't awake to it yet, you don't know what's really going on with your money here. So I hope to keep you all in the loop about this, and that more people find out what's going on and attend Members Time every month at 11 a.m., Zoom or in person. But if you're on Zoom, you're going to be censored. So just remember that. And let me know your thoughts and comments, and subscribe if you want to get more updates, please. And if there's anything that you want more detail on, let me know and I'll drop another video. Okay.